He is a good man. He is not enough. But I disagree totally with that country. I don't believe it was a good idea. I told him then. He asked me to come out there, and I refused. And I did not support the technique. I understand the frustration. Totally. Totally. And we should have been putting all our energy into doing something to help the Hammonds. And yes, the rest of the ranchers in this country, because there's no question about it. The federal government is shutting you down. They are. And you can look at the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. This is not my opinion. Let's go back 2 years, shall we? Or 22 months. Can we go back 22 months to Bunkerville, Nevada, where some of this, I guess, got started? Do you know how many ranchers there were in Clark County, Nevada? There were 53. You know that there was only one left now? The nut, the right-wing extremist, the anti-government guy. He saved his ranch. The others did not. And all were put out of business by our own federal government. One, the Dan sisters. I know them too. They're Native American. They don't care. The federal government doesn't care. And guess what? They're going after the Lakota Sioux land in South Dakota and Nebraska too. I went there and stood with the Lakota Sioux. Loved them. Great people. The federal government does not care what race you are or who you are. They're taking the land. They want the land. And if the Oregon State Sheriff's Association wanted to investigate something, investigate this for me. How many ranchers have they already put out of business in Oregon? Do you know how many farmers they put out of business? Do you know how many farmers in the San Joaquin Valley they've put out of business in California, where we get 50% of our fruits, vegetables, and nuts? Do you know how many farmers they put out of business in Klamath Falls Basin? When they turned off the water there, I was there. What was that, 9, 10, 12 years ago? It's the Bush administration did that one. Do you know the difference between the Obama and Bush administration? Obama spends more. That's all. Obama spends more. That's it. It's the same thing. Take the land, suppress, oppress, and attack. You know, I've been to Washington, D.C. a few times. And I love Washington, D.C. Hate the politicians and hate the government, but I love Washington, D.C. And I walked into the Jefferson Memorial. Man, he was a radical right-wing extremist, wasn't he? Have you read the wall in that building? I read the wall. I guess you're not supposed to read the stuff there. You're certainly not supposed to quote it. And you're not supposed to read the Constitution in this country today. And you're certainly not supposed to quote it. Because the media will nail you big time. Oh, you're an anti-government extremist. All you have to do is quote the Founding Fathers and quote the Constitution, and you're going to get that label. And then, if that doesn't stick, they'll start telling everybody that you're a racist. Wow. And I just got back from Houston last weekend, supporting a candidate there running in Houston for sheriff. And he's running completely and entirely on a constitutional platform that he, in the third largest sheriff's office in the United States of America, will be a constitutional sheriff, and he will enforce the Constitution. And he's not going to allow the IRS and other federal agencies to come in and victimize his citizens. Wow, what a novel idea. And Sheriff Arpaio from Phoenix and I were both there campaigning with him. And don't cheer for Joe, he didn't come. And Joe and I were there with him, and we took several pictures just to prove to people, because Carl Pittman, who's that candidate, is a black American. And yet they tried to tell the people that Joe and I are both racist. And you know who questioned that the most? Carl Pittman. And he's a good man. He's a Republican. And I don't care what party they are, I really don't. Because my other favorite sheriff in America is Sheriff David A. Clark Jr. from Milwaukee, the only black sheriff in all of Wisconsin. And he's my brother. He's a little bit dark complected more than I am, but he probably beat me in basketball too. But he's a great man. And we don't care what party people are. We don't care what color they are. We don't care. but we care if you support and defend the Constitution. We care if you support and defend and keep your oath of office. Isn't it a little bit of a matter of integrity that when you take your job, before you can take your job, you have to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution? Not to the President, not to the Supreme Court, not to the county commissioners, but in God's name, you swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution itself. What does that presuppose? That you might read it. That you might know what you're swearing to. And that makes every police officer, peace officer, every public official, every sheriff, a guard of the Constitution. That's what we are. And that all three branches of government, separate as they might be, have the same purpose. And that is to protect and defend liberty. In fact, you want to know what the Declaration of Independence says? Is the purpose of all government? Of all government. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That almost sounds religious, doesn't it? Oh, it can't be religious. We can't do religious stuff. But it tells us in there where our rights come from. And it does not come from Washington, D.C., and it does not come from the president, and it didn't even come from the forefathers of this great country. Our rights come from, let's see, what did they say? Endowed by our Creator. And if we break our word to you to protect your Creator endowed rights, we're breaking our word to Almighty God. We have lied. We've taken an oath that we made a joke of. And the founders thought we will have everybody in all three branches swear that oath so that we will perpetuate the continuance of our sacred Constitution. And we fought 4 wars to stop communism, and now we embrace it in our country today. These things were never meant to be, my friends. Never meant to be. Just as much as I'm standing here in front of you, this was never meant to be. And we've got to take America back. And I want to reiterate something again. The CSPOA and my life are dedicated to a peaceful and effective return to our Constitution. Now, when I left my home this morning, I knelt down in prayer with my wife and my son, and I asked that this meeting tonight would be the beginning of America coming together, and those of you who are FBI agents in the room, I mean this to you, and to any peace officer or public official, same thing. It is time for you who work in all levels of government to come together with us, with the people of this country, and help us return America to its constitutional foundation. That's all we have. My dear friends, that's why I came here. That is why I came here. The threats notwithstanding, that is why I came here. And I believe so much in you as a community, and I'm hoping that some way, somehow, I can bring some peace to you, and that I can give you some direction that we can go. Now, I kind of admit this right up front. I've done some crazy things. All right? Suing the federal government when I was sheriff in a small town in southern Arizona was absolutely crazy. Ask my wife. She'll tell you. Even though she was the one who made the final decision for this to go. To this day, I still say, you must have been having a weird day that you actually said for me to go ahead and do this. And she did. And that was a miracle. And we look back at that. That happened in that would have been like January of 1994. Because this was pursuant to the Brady Bill. And the Brady Bill was the first time in American history where Congress passed a law signed by the president, Bill Clinton at the time, signed by the president that proposed a gun control scheme known as the Brady Bill that forced and threatened to arrest sheriffs in this country. I'm not making this up. You can go look up the case yourself. Cornell University Law School did a great review of it. Look it up for yourself. I've got copies of it here. There's no way I can lie about this. This happened in court. I was there. And they actually threatened to arrest us if we failed to comply. All the sheriffs in the country, you either do this because we told you to, or you're going to jail. And I'm going to show you this. Now, just so you know, what you see behind you, I'm going to show you the evidence. Not just of that, but of this whole thing that I'm talking about. Many of you want to know, is this really true that I've written in books, that I've spent my life doing? Is the sheriff the #1 law enforcement authority in your county? Yes. In this country. Okay? Some still doubt that, and I'm going to show those doubting Thomases the proof. And I'm a former investigator, former detective. I've investigated murder, investigated bike theft, whatever. Shoplifting, rape, any of them, any crime that you've ever imagined, I've investigated. Oh, guess what? I've investigated arson too. Do you know, to be charged with arson, you have to do it on purpose. You have to prove intent. It means that you intentionally burn something to destroy something. That there was criminal intent. Is there any way that was involved with the Hammond situation? No. None. None. And so if there was none of that, there certainly wasn't any intention to commit domestic terrorism. And everybody knows they are not domestic terrorists. And that is a joke. And that's why when Lou Dobbs said, I blame every elected official in Oregon, he was absolutely correct. Because there's not anybody in here that doesn't know that is an absolute outrage and a farce. And let's get serious about that. And I go right back to my question. Who has the responsibility, the moral duty, to interpose and stand in the way when somebody is receiving that kind of ridiculous treatment, this kind of criminal treatment in America today? Now, briefcase. I need my briefcase. Did somebody throw that? Jimmy can get it. Okay. There it is. I've got to show you something there too because, Johnny. Wow. That's what you call service with a smile there. Thank you. Thank you. He really was smiling too. I don't know if any of you remember this, but we didn't learn a lot about the principles of the Revolutionary War when I went to school. But you know the Battle of Trenton? When George Washington crossed the Delaware, you know, he looked so strong in that picture. They're running away. They're running from the Redcoats over to Valley Forge because they have no way of fighting anymore. If they weren't suffering from dysentery, they were suffering from desertion. And this was no picnic. And some of the men, one captain said, some of the men were naked in every sense of the word. Some had taken the last little pieces of clothes and tied them around their feet because they had no boots. And when they went back to Trenton, it was called blood tracks in the snow. And literally some of them left tracks of blood in the snow. Now, how did they get so motivated to go back? They were running, they go in and seeking refuge at Valley Forge, and some of the wives came there to try to help them eat something besides fire cakes. You know what that is? Ho! Wheat boiled in water. Wheat flour or just white flour boiled in water, and they eat it. Nothing caked about it, unless they let it dry, and then they eat that. That's all they had. Any wonder that they had dysentery, right? So, how do you get a starving, beaten, unequipped,